I started these conversations to discuss leadership, mentorship, growth, and so much more from voices you may not have heard from before. I hope the conversations inspire you, motivate you, and give you something to think about. This is Leadership in Colour from myself, Anyaegbuna, supported and powered by me. Hello, and welcome to the next episode of Leadership in Colour. This one I've been waiting for quite some time, right? It's with my good friend here, Elizabeth Anyaegbuna, and I got to say that's the first time I've had to say her full name out loud, because I endearingly call her Queen Elizabeth, as is her stature within the media and advertising industry. But Elizabeth, why don't you give us all a better introduction than the one that I just gave?
Oh, thank you, and this is exciting. Yes, and thank you so much, Shez, and well done for pronouncing my name properly. First go. So yes, I'm Elizabeth Anyaegbuna. I've been in the industry for 20 odd years. I do wear multiple hats. Yeah, so I suppose, day job. I'm co-founder and CEO of 16x9, which is a media strategy and production agency. I'm also strategic growth advisor of responsible resourcing agency, which focuses on diverse talents and trying to balance it out and be more representative in the workforce. Recently, president of Bloom UK, 500-member women's network, co-founder of Join Our Table, which is all about amplifying Black female talent in our industry, and I consult for the Hearst networks. I've come from broadcast background, so Sky, Viacom, Turner, and A&E Networks, which is now Hearst Networks, and so I still need to hold on to a bit of that content and consumer. I still need that creativity within me, so I love doing that as well. So yes, I do a lot in driving revenue and growth, and I champion EDI and belonging across the media, and have done for quite a while.
Coming from the UK and then going to Nigeria, I assume that in boarding school you sort of got everything structured, and you know everything is done in a particular way, and so on and so forth. Does that help with the transition from going from London to Nigeria, because you're not immediately exposed to the outer elements and the rest of the world, and for example, you can't get your favorite shows on TV, or you can't, people are trading in a different way maybe in the shops, or that sort of stuff. Like you're not exposed to as much of that because you're in boarding school, or have I got that wrong?
I mean, I guess so, probably. I never really looked at it like that, but potentially, I think, I'll be honest with you, I feel to some degree we weren't fully exposed because we tended to move. We had our sort of friends and family, and we were led by that, and at that time it was great, in that regard. Subsequently, then of course you then had all the things that sort of then followed, like they had a coup, and so the army sort of took over, and then there was an adjustment there, and so don't get me wrong, I'm not painting, it wasn't all perfect, but yeah, you're right. I guess maybe to some degree being in there did mean that we didn't really kind of get exposed to all the other things. Although I wonder whether my dad would necessarily have allowed us to be exposed to any other things anyway, to be honest, because he was quite a strict man. Love him, but he was, and so I did find it tough. I mean, I definitely did, because it was just, I was grappling with feeling, I came there with the most English of accents, pale, not regarded as Nigerian, or black, in that regard, and just a bit of an, strange sort of adjustment, because like I said, we hadn't been coming and going, so it was a real rip the plaster off and sort of drop us in this place. So it was an adjustment, and so to then be sent to boarding school was even more. But I think that's what that's what my parents were. They thought that's what they were supposed to do, type thing, right? My sister didn't go in the end. So she was a day student, so lucky her. But it came with this. I mean, it was brutal to some degree, but the education was incredible. But it was brutal. It was just literally like survival of the fittest, bizarrely enough. So I ended up making some incredible friends. All of us, I guess, partly probably protecting ourselves because we're all similar. all from London, literally all from London, and we stayed friends till to today. I remember once when I got to the, I remember when I was introduced, in boarding schools, went to the school, and someone took it upon themselves to introduce me to the only other mixed race, mixed heritage person in the school. I just said, you two should be friends. I mean, we weren't. I mean, we're so not the same. I mean, we were so different. But yeah, and so I always felt that spotlight on me. But it has then provided the resilience, I guess, that I subsequently have had till now, really, to be able to handle being the only one in the room. Flip side, ironically, when we came back here to UK.
I think there is a thing at the moment where people are told to be themselves, right, and bring their true selves and be authentic. But with all the tensions in the world, and even forget the world, right, just like on our doorstep, it's actually quite difficult to be your true self. And I'm trying to sort of draw the parallels there. I'm trying to draw the parallels there between what's going on in the world right now and us actually now, me for the first time in a long time, feeling like a bit of an outsider, and yourself growing up in, I think you said Northwest London, is that right?
Yeah.
So growing up in Northwest London, I don't know what it was like growing up in Northwest London. I'm from South London, so depends where you are in South London. You can be one of many or one of a few. And then going to Nigeria, where you're clearly one of a very, very few, you must have felt like you were on the outside throughout your life, right? Like, and that's a difficult thing to get your head around, because that's the motherland, and this is also the motherland.
Oh, 100%. It's been a journey. I remember once when I was, this is back here, it's just some sort of a little job that I had, and a friend of mine had come to see me, meet me for lunch. It's a guy, a friend of mine, and he's mixed heritage as well. I want to say just slightly darker than me, but not by much. And so he came to sort of meet me, and my boss said, "Oh yeah, your friend's just come to." I think it was it was unannounced. Yes, it was a bit of a surprise, something like that. And so she does, "A friend of yours come to see you. He came." I said, "Oh, describe him." I couldn't place who it was. He goes, "Oh, it's really, he was dark. He was tall. It was quite dark." And this, and I was thinking, "You've described. He's not far off me, which means that you view me as dark, and yet in Nigeria, I'm viewed as pale or light or white." And so you just find yourself right, okay, where exactly, as you rightly said, where exactly do I belong, like really belong, because yes, you're right, you're finding yourself sort of not quite belonging, I suppose, because of how you're perceived or how you're treated, right? So it has been an interesting one, and it also makes you think, gosh, I mean, people, are you then judged based on just how you look? It doesn't matter about until you then open your mouth and you sort of talk about your history and what you are, whatever, and then you find common ground, etc. But that first impression, really, so you are viewed based on just how you look and the colour of your skin, and you're put in whichever box that is, which is an outsider's box, or certainly not the majority, right? And so it is a bit of an interesting one, because it's you've got two sides, right? So you see both motherlands, as you rightly said, and not necessarily looked at as fully accepted in either one, which makes you float around in this sort of space. That was a journey now, and thank goodness I've done the studies that I've done to some degree, because it did help me, right? So I did some studying around. I don't know whether you know Steve Biko, but he wrote this. He's all about black consciousness. Yes, he was a civil rights. Civil rights. He was certainly a freedom fighter, right? In fact, I believe he was before Mandela. Certainly up there with him. But he coined this thing around black consciousness, and talking about black is beautiful, and it's about the consciousness. It's not the skin color. It's about you, and you in that space and where you belong, as opposed to whether you are light or dark or anywhere in between, And I got comfortable or realized that it wasn't about my tone. It was about where I feel like I belong and how, and the consciousness around it. And so being black is about consciousness, and I embrace that, and that has made me settle into where I am, as opposed to where it was before, which is feeling like it's on the outside. Do I still feel that way sometimes? Yes, but I'm made to feel that way, but that's not me. That's somebody viewing or having, I guess, whatever view they have, but I'm comfortable in my space. But it's been a journey to get there. I mean, I went to the two places, it was a revelation, but I went to Cuba, and it was the first time where I felt like I was in the majority, and I'm not even from Cuba, because a lot of people just looked tonally like me, and it was an incredible feeling, which caught me off guard because I wasn't obviously expecting that. And Brazil, I'm not from either of those places, and some places in the Caribbean, St. Lucia being one of them, where people almost look past you because you might look a bit more Western dressed, but you're one of us, aren't you? I'm thinking, wow, okay, I'm not from here, and yet somehow I'm accepted or assumed that I am just based on the way I look, which I think is a bit of a conundrum for a lot of people who have a mixed, not conundrum, but it's just it is a reality for a lot of people who are from different cultures.
It plays with your mind, right? Like it's difficult to get your head around. We're in this cosmopolitan city where there are 100 different shades of people. Why should I be felt like I'm an outsider? Is one thing.
Yeah.
And then secondly, it's like, well, I'm going back to the country of my parents or whichever part of my heritage. We grew up eating, broadly speaking, the same food. We spoke about the same things. Your parents were talking about the same things that my parents were talking about. They had the same stories. How are we different? And okay, yes, we might have slightly different lived experiences, but someone from North Nigeria versus South Nigeria, for example, would have slightly different lived experiences as well, right? Like I appreciate it's not as extreme as someone coming from Northwest London, but the point still remains that surely that's interesting, not something to put someone on the outside. It's actually almost a reason to put them on the inside.
Yeah. No, I think that very well-worn phrase of, we have more in common than what makes us, than what makes us different is so true. I don't know why we fixate on certain things more than others, but you're right. If we seek to find those common grounds, yeah, I mean, I am sure I speak to friends of mine, and who are from, I've got a very good friend whose family are from Pakistan. She's her heritage is Pakistan. I've got friends from India. I've got friends from the Caribbean, whatever, and we have so many things in common. I mean, it's so familiar when you're talking about the parents and what they want you to study, and it's generally engineering, law, accountancy, and literally it's the humor, it's that joke, and whether it is someone from the African family or someone from the, it's that thing about, my parents did that, and so, and all that sort of stuff, and or our experiences around colonialism, say for example, and the impact on countries, or slave trade, depending on who you're talking to, or being a brown-skinned person even though you're part of the global majority, but you're in a place where you're deemed minority, and then so or the types of food where you've got the influences of these things. Like, I get that, I can eat that quite comfortably because actually there's reference somehow, in the food that we eat, and so on. So you've got so many things that cross. It's actually quite remarkable that I think we should tap more into that, really, than what divides us, or makes us different.
Agreed. So on that same note then, what does authenticity mean to you?
Do you know, I think authenticity is actually, to me, being real, but also evidenced, So you are who you are. What you're talking about is authentic, not only in what you're saying, but actually showing up, right? So in other words, you're not only talking it, but you're actually kind of walking it, Otherwise, I think it needs to be evidenced in order for it to be authentic in my mind, If I were talking about inclusion or diversity and all this sort of stuff, and I could talk from my lived experience, of course, I could talk that, but I've then not done any work in this space. I can't sit here and then go, yeah, I'm authentic. There's an authenticity to an opinion fully. There's an authenticity to my story, of course, and my experience. But when I'm talking about the work, I need to kind of show that I've actually done it. Also, I think you need to be either, schooled, educated, have the experience, all of that in order to actually say that you're authentically representing something as opposed to appropriating it, And so, I think, that's what I think. You show up, it's real and evidenced.
Yeah, I think that's well put. And the reason why I asked that question is because I usually ask, how important is it for you? But I know you well enough to know that authenticity is very important. It is and as you said, even within your studies, you looked into your heritage and also around social justice and injustice around the world. Tie that together with law, I can't imagine that I'd ever want to be on the other side of it, because with a hell of a lot of insight, and the other person doesn't really stand a chance.
Okay, that's very kind.
I'm going to switch gears ever so slightly. Can you talk me through your early days in your career, your first job, and how you ended up in this industry?
So I ended up in this industry. So my first job in this industry was Sky. A friend of mine was working there, and she told me there was a job. And so my first job was in traffic, actually, at Sky Media, and I had no idea what that was. I just fell into it like a lot of other people have. But I knew that I wanted to work for a broadcaster. I'm articulating it this way, but that's not necessarily how I would have articulated it at the time. I just knew I wanted to work, for a broadcaster. And I knew that I wanted to work for Sky. And I worked for Sky, but I knew that I wanted to work for Viacom, MTV, particularly because, of course, it was influencing me at the time, and I loved it. So I started at Traffic. I was there for 9 months to be exact, before they realised I was more of a salesperson, and then moved into ad sales. And basically, I have to say, Sky was brilliant for training, providing that foundation, because it was really fully when it came to sort of providing the training, your experience and so on, and it's giving me that foundation to then sort of move into to where I am now. And so I worked at Sky. I was more on the investment sort of side. Then moved into digital. Sky had Nickelodeon, and as well as obviously Sky Channels and some other ones. I moved into Nickelodeon for a bit on the digital side, as well as stayed with Sky. Then I moved from there to Viacom when Viacom took over the ad sales for Nickelodeon, and obviously had MTV at the time and so on, and what is now Comedy Central. So I moved into digital, came back into I headed up digital at Viacom, the website sort of there, which was MTV as well as Nickelodeon at the time. Thought, I've got the spot sales, as it were, in investment. I've got the digital side thing, but I wanted the partnerships. That's because I suppose the creativity in there just need a little bit more. Don't get me wrong, I love the digital bit. It was great because it was microsites. It's all, immersing yourself in kids' content. It was great. You could just forget the real world and actually just immerse yourself in all these wonderful games and activities and things like that. But yes, I came back to do partnerships and sponsorships and branded content and things like that. Then from there, from Viacom, I decided to... So that kind of sort of moving up, really. So account director, partnership director at that point, and then I shifted a little bit to the left. Or right, I don't know. I took up a role that set up an ad sales department in a company that was serving sub-Saharan Africa. So I was based in the UK. They were called a company called GTV, and they had bought the English Premiership football rights, which is gold dust in Africa, of course. They had other sort of content as well, entertainment content, ironically, in Nickelodeon, and some other pieces of content, so very familiar content, but they had acquired that rights, but they just had no advertising, no ad sales. So I set that up there. It was an incredible experience because I got to go to Kenya, Uganda, obviously Nigeria, South Africa, yeah, and just widen my not only experience but just experience in meeting all these people and sort of doing all these things. And it wasn't just on air, it was on the ground, because we invested in local football. And what was great is that you could see the money that you brought in with sponsorships and advertising. You could see it travel all the way into the end point, which was impacting on these local football teams who could, because of whether it's their shirts that you were sponsoring or funding or so on, they could put on their games, and then you then filmed it and showed it on TV, of course, which bars and hotels could then air, so customers were then coming in sort of watching. I mean, you literally could see how you were impacted, and I absolutely loved it. Was it hard work? Yes. It was crazy. I was just, sort of driving, flying to 3 or 4 different countries in one go. Certainly knackering. I had some incredible, bizarre conversations, with people in very interesting places, because that's how it works. Very much business, pure, that's it. You've either got something I want or you don't, and that's that. I had to adjust. I did, and that was where the benefit of living in Nigeria played off, I have to say, because it was not that the whole of Africa is like that, but I could shift into that sort of mode, and understand the culture there and apply that, and the authenticity then presented itself, right, as opposed to someone coming in without any real knowledge of the space, And so I used that, actually. I did. It came to my aid. And then after that, so that was, well, like I said, I set it up, it was like a blank sheet of paper, and then we did incredibly well, really, really did well. Unfortunately, the economic sort of crash came in at the time, so came back into the UK, came to Viacom, to Viacom, then Sky again, then Networks, and then I set up 16:9, where I decided to come on to the other side and actually I set up a media agency that had production in there, as well as the media strategy, planning and buying. And so all my knowledge from a broadcast, I suppose, sort of space and digital space, coming at it from more of a business angle as opposed to transactional, or as opposed to, right, okay, here's your audience, so we're just going to cut it that way. No, it's more like, let's sit down and actually really understand your KPIs, and let's understand what it is you want to do, and having the knowledge of how things are produced, and the challenges of compliance, or the challenges of programming, or even how it ultimately needs to get to air, say for example. I had all that knowledge in applying it there, so and ended up at Store 16:9, which is where I am now.
That is one hell of a journey, right? But it's like you manifested this role at Viacom and then made it happen. You saw 100%. MTV, you were like, I want to be on MTV.
100%. Yeah, I knew I was going to work there. I mean, I believe in manifestations. I do. And I know you have to work to then ultimately get there. It doesn't just drop out of the sky. But I think you have to have that mindset and that will and determination to get there. And I did. Yeah, and it was an incredible experience, really. We did some incredible things. Creating stuff, for NFL, Adidas, Nike, ad-funded content where we're in New Orleans, creating something with the Saints, the NFL team, and MTV Base, at the time, of course, with Trevor Nelson, and put something together which was then on air, and all the stuff for Adidas, with all the football. It's wonderful to be able to do that, as well as that, things in and around content, as well as just doing these types of campaigns and deals that were just so multi-layered, with content that you just enjoyed, right? When you're representing a brand that you really consume and that you actually really believe in and love, it makes it so much sort of easier. Of course, it wasn't just MTV. We had Nickelodeon. Love Nickelodeon because, of course, it's kids and so on. I was the coolest. I mean, my kids loved me because I was talking Nickelodeon or MTV, and so it was youth or kids, and it keeps you, I don't know, joyous, certainly, right? So I enjoyed that. And then even when I went to Turner Media, again, it was Cartoon Network, Boomerang. So I have had a lot of that, being in that sort of young youth and young sort of content for a while, certainly in my industry. And it was good fun, really. It was dealing with some brands.
It sounds amazing. Like I said, I mean, the ability to say that you've met all these footballers and that you've worked on all these, great campaigns and the rest of it, and to say that you've worked on the brands that you really wanted to work on, and those that you have an affinity to is fantastic. Manifestation aside, although I don't mind if that's the advice that you give, what advice would you give to someone who is starting up right now in their career?
I would say certainly to not be afraid to take risks, and there are some people, I've met some people who are starting out in their career and they feel like they've got it all planned. So this kind of quite narrow. This is where I'm going, but they're starting, so they don't really know about all these other ones. And there's nothing wrong with that. At the end of the day, if you've got a singular intention and you end up and that's all good, it's fine. I guess some people who want to become a doctor who start and they're proud of it and then they become that doctor and that's what they want, and that's kind of okay. But I guess what I'm saying is, if an opportunity presents itself, you're thinking, don't be afraid to take risks, because first of all, you're at the beginning of your career, so you can afford to experiment and sort of see what's out there. You never know where it's going to take you, really, ultimately. I a couple of times, I had a couple of things presented to me and I didn't take them. I didn't take them because I was a little bit like, it involved, in one case, it involved me going to another country, which now I think I should have done, so financial experience. And another one was, something sort of similar, and I didn't. And there was no real reason. I was just kind of playing safe. And I should have done, right? So I just think take risks 100%. Not take risks, just go for it, right? And the other thing is actually really to be true to who you are and not lose that. Because I talk about my career as I've come along, but I do remember when I used to go for interviews, I used to have a certain look. I used to blow dry my hair straight. I used to tone myself down. I used to tone my blackness down, actually. Yeah, because I felt that way I could avoid any bias or any kind of issue. I literally blow dry, put it in a hair bun at the back, centre parting, no makeup to hone in on any features, keep my hands sort of where they are and do it. Yeah. And at some point I was like, what am I doing? Just have to be me. Now, you have that journey to get there, and we can sit here and actually tell someone who just started, well, you need to do this and this. No. Everyone has to get there, at their pace and their journey, and the penny drops. You have a moment at some point where it just sort of drops. When you go, actually, I'm me, and I'm going to go. I don't need to code switch. I don't need to be a version of myself. You either accept me for me, or you don't. Yeah. And so I would just say, don't lose that. Who you are.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you say. So Faisal Kamali, who was at Turner as well, or he's at Turner, and he also mentioned that he didn't know what trafficking was, and he'd sort of kicked off in that sort of role. And I think Ravleen at Microsoft also said something similar about just go for it. And I think it's really, really good advice to just go for it, right? Like, you can figure it out later. There's usually support within the establishment. I mean, if you're going to a good business, there'll be support there. And actually, regardless to what sort of business it is, your objectives are aligned. If you succeed, they succeed. So it's on them to support you. So there is no such thing as stupid questions, really. In the early days, just go for it. And I'd say that there are networks out there as well, like MIFA being one of them, and there are others as well.
100% networks, yeah.
That can help you bloom. That can really help you.
Yeah, Bloom networks, join our table. There's so many networks out there now, which I didn't have actually, and I wish I had. I can't believe how many people of colour were out there. So I joined MIFA. I was like, wow, where have you all been? And not that you only need that, but you certainly do need reference points, people who totally get certain experiences that you've got without saying too much, right? So who can kind of support you and spotlight you and do whatever. So definitely networks are incredibly powerful, and I 100% believe them having a mentor or a champion, someone who truly can yeah, not only champion but open doors that maybe you may not be able to do, and just just be kind to yourself. You're not going to get everything right first time. There are going to be some mistakes along the way, and you just pick yourself up and know that that's all part of the journey, really, and just be kind to yourself while still needing to be certainly flexible, to apply a level of flexibility. If you're asking for flexibility from companies, or you're asking for all of that and all that, then you need to be giving your bit as well. So there needs to be a relationship, between the two in order to get to where you need to get to, as opposed to demanding everything, sit down, go, well, this is what it is, right? Because you are coming in to something, and so there needs to be that working through what works for you as well as what works for where you're coming in, which you get along the line. Yeah, you get resilience as you go along. I mean, I sort of say to someone now that you reach a certain point, you're in that sort of stage, you are at that sort of point or position where you're entitled to not give a shit. Do you know what I mean? And of course I care, but what I'm trying to say is, if something isn't working for me, it's not working for me, and that's that. And I've earned that space to be able to kind of not give a shit about it and move on.
There's this scene in, I think it's called The Gambler, with Mark Wahlberg, and he basically owes this guy a lot of money, and I don't want to give away the plot, but he's not very, he's just, at this point, it seems like he's not very good with money, right? Like he makes it, he loses it, he makes it, and the other guy comes, that is his loan shark or whatever. He's talking to him about the position of FU, right? And he's like, look, this is where you want to get to in life, right? Like you want to get into the place,
exactly right.
Where you can say FU, right? And that's it.
Exactly
like that.
Right.
So that's what you're working towards. So stop sort of like messing around and losing all this money. Like, this is where you want to get to. And that's not the exact sentiment of the scene, but that's the sentiment that I take away from that scene. And
and that's exactly right. I just tried to be polite with the language I was using, but that's exactly right. You reach that position where that's exactly right. You get to that position, and that's it. You earn it. You put the work in. You do what you need to do, but you also recognize you. And not to compromise on the true you. Really, if it's harming you, or if it's making you be a harmful version of yourself because you're having to, then you need to kind of reevaluate.
Agreed. All right, so talking about you, let's talk about you. What's going on with 16 by 9?
Right, yeah, like I said, we're a media agency, so strategy, planning, and production. And so sort of end to end, really. We do focus more on your screen-based media. So I've obviously come from TV, of course, that's what it's going to be. So TV and video, so TV, outdoor, digital, cinema, so screen-based media. So we tend to attract those types of brands that are looking to scale up, maybe digital first, or just want more scale, really. Tend to sort of look at those. But we also do produce, which I guess stands us out, a bit of a USP, because we roll that into our companies. So sometimes we might be producing for companies and not actually doing their media plans at all, and everything from actually producing an ad to making an ad compliant, anywhere in between. So it's sort of working on that. Obviously, need a small indie in the ocean of big indies and network agencies, so there's a lot of competition, and so seeking more brands to do that. I do have like a side, sort of, not side, but a personal intention in supporting more black owned businesses, to get them on, to do their media for them, because I think sometimes they don't have access or the knowledge around, sort of to help, or they think, I can't go there, it's going to be too expensive. No, it's not. So to work with those, but that's a personal thing for me, and have done that. So that's 16 by 9, sort of business as usual type thing, on that front, as well as, like I say, all the other things that I kind of do in and around it.
Yeah, and it sounds like a business that's really needed, right? Like that hand-holding from production through to delivery it's really strange that is the thing that sets you apart, because it almost feels logical that would be included in some way or another.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we come at it from a different, except because we've gotten so used to, not because we've got the experience of working with clients and working also with those who produce content and those who know audience. So we can really we have approach of sitting around the table. Right, okay, what is your business objective? As opposed to, like I said, the approach which would be, here's our target and we'll go on, run numbers and then go, right, okay, you need to be here, here and here and here. Of course you need the data to inform your strategy, but ultimately we do apply context as well, right? Like a contextual buy, where you're placing it, like I said, what is the business, what are your KPIs, who really is your target audience, and then also, this is what you're thinking, but how about this wild card here, and sort of stretch it, but just be that kind of, that kind of business partner in a way, which is more, we're senior, but we roll our sleeves up and kind of are close, work closely with the client, right? So we tend to have that approach. I mean, as a smaller indie, we don't always, when it comes to things like how you're pitching, when you're getting on the pitch list and things like that, that can be a challenge, of course, because we're not necessarily always going to get there because of the way procurement happens sometimes, and that's, I think, something that should be looked at. So I think you should have a mixture of all sorts. Yes, you can have your networks, yes, you can have your big indies, and then have someone like us as well in the mix, to pitch for business, as opposed to having to really battle to get that door open, So that's always a challenge, for us. But we like where we are, right? Because it allows us to be fluid, it allows us to be authentic, it allows us to be transparent, and it also allows us to make decisions on who we want to work with and who we don't, if the values aren't aligned.
Elizabeth, I've really enjoyed this conversation. And to be fair, I've probably taken up more time of yours than I should have done. But
No,
I could,
as well.
I could speak for the rest of the day to you. I think there's a lot there. I mean, even just picking apart the RFP process there, I think is every conversation for another time. So tradition is that I let you name the episode. So what would you like to name the episode?
Right, now, this is the bit where, okay, so this is the first, right? Let's see. Beyond the Brief with Elizabeth?
Beyond the Brief. Oh, I like that. I like that a lot.
That?
Yeah. What's your reasoning behind that?
Well, because it's beyond that, isn't it? It's beyond, and it's beyond the brief media, obviously playing on that. Also, the word brief it's more than a summary, so it's getting into detail. It's simple, and I like simple.
Yeah.
Conversational language, and I'm thinking that maybe Beyond the Brief with Elizabeth. I don't know.
I think that's brilliant. I think that's absolutely brilliant. Elizabeth, thank you so much for being such a fantastic guest today. Honestly, I really enjoyed it, and love to have you back on the podcast again.
Oh, totally. I've absolutely loved it as well. Thank you for having me, and I will absolutely be